The cold never left Lyra. Even when she closed her eyes and tried to sleep, the icy touch of the Vorin chambers seeped into her bones. For years, she had been their bed warmer, a strange and humiliating role that humans had never been meant for. She had been taken from her home as a child, sold like a commodity and shipped across the stars to serve creatures that thought themselves far superior. Their skin was pale and reflective, their eyes black like glass, and their world was so cold that even warmth was treasured more than food or air. Humans were rare, fragile, and for the Vorin, incredibly useful. Each morning she awoke under strict supervision. A soft hum filled the chambers as the life support systems maintained the temperature just above freezing. Lyra shivered under the thin coverings the Vorin provided. There was no comfort in this sleep, only the faint illusion of heat when she was in the presence of her captors. She had learned long ago that any resistance or defiance would be punished swiftly. The first night she arrived in the colony, she had tried to resist. She had pulled away when the Vorin reached for her, whispered cries slipping into the air. But the guards had laughed, a sound more chilling than the cold itself, and reminded her without words what her purpose was. Since then, she had learned silence, observation, and patience. Time passed differently in the colony. Days and nights blurred, measured only by the rhythms of the Vorin. Lyra counted them not by hours, but by the routines, the shift of guards, the hum of the heaters, the patterns of the supply drones. These small details became her lifeline, the threads of information she could use if opportunity ever came. She discovered that the Vorin were predictable in ways humans often overlooked. They had rituals, superstitions, and patterns. Lyra memorized each one, storing them in her mind like treasure. She learned to read their moods, anticipate their actions, and avoid attention. The longer she stayed, the more she understood that her survival depended not on strength, but on cunning. Every glance, every gesture, every word could be a clue. She learned that the Vorin valued control above all else, and that any hint of human cleverness must be hidden. Yet in the quiet moments when the chambers were empty and the cold pressed close, she allowed herself memories of her past life. She remembered her homeworld, the smell of forests, the sound of wind through trees, the warmth of the sun on her skin. These memories were painful but precious, reminders of what she was fighting to reclaim. Despite the harshness of her role, she found ways to keep her spirit alive. She created codes with the other captives, small messages hidden in gestures or whispered sounds. It was dangerous. Discovery meant punishment, sometimes worse. But the human need to connect, to communicate, refused to die even in the coldest prison. The Vorin, for all their intelligence, underestimated humans. They saw them as fragile, easily broken, and meant only to serve. Lyra had learned to use this assumption to her advantage. She observed the technology of the colony, noting weaknesses and patterns that even the Vorin ignored. The locks, the heating systems, the schedule of the guards, all of it could be turned if one were clever enough to open a path to freedom. One evening, as the stars glimmered faintly through the reinforced glass of her chamber, Lyra overheard a conversation that would change everything. Two Vorin officers spoke of a shipment arriving from the Outer Rim, a supply convoy bringing resources for the colony. She did not understand all the technical terms, but she caught the important detail. The convoy required the Vorin to leave certain access points unguarded. Her mind began to spin with possibilities. Days turned into weeks as she watched the routines of the colony shift in preparation for the convoy. She recorded every step in her mind, noting when the guards were most distracted and where the shadows offered concealment. She practiced moving silently, testing the limits of her endurance and control. The cold was still there, sharp and unyielding, but she had learned to ignore it, to let it sharpen her senses rather than dull them. Even in her role as a bed warmer, she discovered ways to manipulate her environment. She had learned how to adjust her position to subtly influence the temperature in the chambers, creating moments of comfort for herself without attracting attention. Small victories, but victories nonetheless. Every advantage mattered. Then came the first hint of an ally. One of the younger captives, a boy named Ren, had been quiet and observant, much like Lyra. Through small gestures and careful timing, they developed a method of communication. It was rudimentary, using movements and sounds that the Vorin would dismiss as meaningless. Yet, through this secret code, they shared information, warnings, and hope. For the first time in years, Lyra did not feel completely alone. Hope, however, was dangerous. The Vorin were quick to punish any sign of rebellion. Lyra remembered the screams of captives who had tried to escape or resist. It had been years since anyone had succeeded. Fear was constant, a shadow that could not be ignored. Yet the human spirit, resilient and stubborn, refused to be extinguished. One night, as the colony settled into its quiet routine, Lyra made a small but significant observation. A maintenance drone moved along a predictable path, following the same schedule each cycle. Its sensors were blind to certain patterns, creating moments when a human could pass unnoticed. She noted the timing, the angles, and the potential escape routes in her mind. This was the spark she had been waiting for, a chance, however small, to change her fate. She shared her observation with Ren, who nodded in understanding. They began to plan carefully, silently. Every detail mattered. Every misstep could be fatal. The idea of freedom was intoxicating, but they knew that desperation could be deadly. Patience, strategy, and careful timing were their allies. Meanwhile, the Vorin continued their lives, unaware of the storm brewing in the minds of their captives. They were confident in their superiority, their control absolute. They could not imagine that humans, fragile and small in their eyes, could possess the cunning and resilience to challenge them. Lyra understood this and used it. Every action, every hesitation was a part of a larger plan. As the days passed, Lyra honed her skills further. She experimented with small manipulations of the colony's systems. A heat vent redirected, a lock disengaged briefly, a door slightly misaligned. These small acts went unnoticed but built her confidence. Each success was a step closer to the impossible, escape. She also studied the Vorin themselves, their habits, their weaknesses. She noted how they reacted to stress, how pride blinded them, how predictability masked vulnerability. She learned to anticipate their movements, to avoid detection, to create opportunities where none seemed to exist. Every detail, every observation was another thread in the web she was weaving. And yet, fear was never far. Lyra felt it as a constant presence, a reminder of the stakes. The Vorin were ruthless and the colony was isolated. No help would come unless it came from within. She thought often of her home, of the family she had lost, of the life she might reclaim. These thoughts fueled her determination. She would not remain a prisoner forever. Humans were not built to be caged. The first real opportunity came unexpectedly. A minor supply delivery required a section of the colony to be left unguarded for a few precious hours. Lyra had watched the patterns carefully and knew exactly when it would happen. She shared the plan with Ren, mapping out the steps, the risks, and the contingencies. On the night of the opportunity, Lyra moved with precision. Every step was calculated, every gesture controlled. She passed the maintenance drone without triggering its sensors, slipped through corridors with shadows as her allies, and guided Ren silently behind her. The world seemed impossibly large, each moment stretching as they navigated the labyrinthine corridors of the Vorin colony. Even as they moved, Lyra's mind raced. She anticipated every patrol, every sound, every possibility of detection. The cold pressed against her skin, sharp and unyielding, but she used it to heighten her awareness. Her heart beat steadily, not with fear, but with focus. This was the moment she had prepared for, the culmination of years of observation, patience, and resilience. Yet as they neared the exit, a shadow moved differently than expected. A guard, changing schedule, stepped into their path. Lyra froze, every muscle tense, her mind calculating options in milliseconds. The guard's eyes flicked in their direction, then moved on. A minor misstep avoided, but a reminder of how close danger always was. Finally, they reached the outer access point, a reinforced gate that led to the cargo bay. The systems were complex, but Lyra had studied them, memorized the sequences, and prepared for this moment. With careful precision, she bypassed the lock, guided Ren through, and held her breath as the gate slid open. Freedom, however temporary, was just beyond. As they slipped into the shadows of the cargo bay, Lyra felt a surge of something she had not felt in years: hope. It was fragile, easily crushed, but real. The world outside, beyond the cold, beyond the Vorin, awaited, and she was ready to reach it. For the first time since she had been taken, Lyra allowed herself a small smile. The journey was far from over, and danger still lurked in every corner. But she had remembered what it meant to be human, resilient, clever, unyielding, and capable of defying even the harshest circumstances. The spark of freedom had been lit, and nothing could extinguish it now. The cargo bay was dimly lit, its metallic surfaces reflecting the faint glow from the distant stars outside the reinforced windows. Lyra pressed herself against a corner, her breath visible in the cold air. Ren followed silently, his young face pale but determined. For years, Lyra had lived in a world of fear, of strict routines and endless cold. Now every step they took toward freedom felt surreal. The Vorin colony, though vast and imposing, had its weaknesses. Lyra had studied them for years, noting every pattern, every predictable movement. But moving through the colony in real time was different from memorizing it. Every sound, every shadow, every flicker of movement could be fatal. Lyra's heart raced, but her mind was sharp, calculating their path forward. She paused to listen. The hum of machinery was constant, a reminder that the colony never truly slept. Guards patrolled at intervals she had memorized, but tonight, small deviations made her uneasy. The Vorin were efficient, but nothing could be perfect. Lyra relied on her instincts, honed over years of survival. She could sense shifts in the patterns, subtle signs that danger might appear. Ren whispered, "Do you think we can really make it?" His voice trembled, though he tried to mask it. Lyra glanced at him, her eyes meeting his. She did not lie, but she offered reassurance. "We will. We have to. We've planned this, and we know the weaknesses. Stay close and follow me." Lyra guided Ren past sensor arrays, using vents and maintenance tunnels she had discovered. Each step brought a new challenge. A locked door here, a patrolling guard there, but her careful observation allowed them to slip by unnoticed. As they approached the central hub of the colony, Lyra paused again. From this vantage point, she could see the patterns of the guards and the flow of the Vorin workers. The colony was organized, hierarchical, and efficient. Every action had a purpose, every patrol a reason. Yet within that efficiency lay vulnerability. She knew it, and she planned to exploit it. Her mind raced with possibilities. The supply convoy that had been mentioned earlier would arrive soon, and the Vorin would be distracted. That distraction was their chance, but it would require precise timing, coordination, and courage. One mistake could mean recapture, or worse. Lyra signaled to Ren to stay close as she approached a control panel. Her fingers moved over the interface with practiced ease, entering sequences she had memorized over years. Lights flickered, and a faint hiss indicated that the system had accepted her commands. A section of the security grid was temporarily disabled, creating a narrow path through the hub. "Quickly," she whispered, and they moved through the corridor. Every sound echoed in the metal halls, and Lyra's ears strained for the faintest shift that might indicate a guard's presence. They passed rooms filled with alien technology, devices Lyra did not fully understand but had learned to manipulate. She felt a surge of confidence. This was her element, her strength. Observation, patience, and intelligence had brought her here. As they neared the exit to the outer ring, a sudden noise made them freeze. A maintenance droid had shifted unexpectedly, its sensors sweeping their path. Lyra held her breath, willing it to pass without detection. The droid's lights moved past them, and Lyra exhaled silently. Ren's hand trembled in hers, but she gave him a firm squeeze. "Almost there." "Keep moving." As they moved, Lyra reflected on how humans had survived in countless harsh environments throughout history. The stories her parents had told her before she was taken came back, the resilience of humanity, the ability to adapt and endure. That spirit, she realized, was alive in her now. The Vorin might have believed humans weak, but strength came in many forms. Intelligence, patience, and courage were as powerful as any weapon. Finally, they reached a maintenance shaft that led to the exterior of the colony. Lyra pried open the panel and slipped inside, pulling Ren after her. The shaft was tight and dark, but the faint glow from the outside stars offered guidance. They climbed carefully, avoiding sharp edges and rusted supports. Every muscle strained, every movement calculated. Freedom felt so close it was almost tangible. When they emerged onto the surface, the cold hit them like a wall. The Vorin's world was unforgiving. Icy winds whipped across the barren landscape, and the ground was slick with frost. Yet even in the harsh conditions, Lyra felt a thrill of triumph. She had survived the impossible, and now, for the first time in years, she was truly free. But freedom was not yet secure. The supply convoy was arriving, and with it, more Vorin would soon be present. Lyra scanned the horizon, noting the distant lights of the approaching ships. She knew they would be heavily guarded, but she also knew the vulnerabilities she had discovered. Timing, strategy, and human ingenuity could tip the balance. She turned to Ren. "We have to reach the rendezvous point before they notice we're gone. Follow me and do exactly as I say." His nod was firm, a reflection of trust forged through shared struggle. They moved swiftly across the frozen landscape, using the terrain to conceal their path. Every step was deliberate, calculated to avoid detection. As they approached the landing zone, Lyra's sharp eyes caught movement in the distance. A patrol of Vorin guards was scanning the area. She flattened herself against the icy ground, signaling Ren to do the same. Minutes stretched into an eternity as the guards moved past, oblivious to the humans hiding in plain sight. Lyra's pulse pounded, but her mind remained clear. She had trained for this, and she would not fail. Finally, the patrol passed, and they continued toward the landing zone. The convoy ships glimmered faintly in the distance, their lights reflecting off the ice. Lyra's heart soared with anticipation and fear. The journey had been long and perilous, but every challenge had brought them closer to this moment. As they reached the perimeter of the landing zone, Lyra paused. She observed the guards, the ship's security measures, and the timing of the patrols. Every detail mattered. She formulated a plan quickly, using the knowledge she had gained from years of observation. She would create a diversion, draw the guards away, and slip onto the ship unnoticed. With careful precision, she executed the plan. Small explosions of heat and light from nearby machinery drew the attention of the guards. Lyra and Ren moved quickly, using the distraction to reach the ship. The boarding ramp was secured, but Lyra had studied its mechanisms. With a few swift motions, she disengaged the lock and guided Ren inside. Once aboard, the interior of the ship was cold but more forgiving than the surface. Lyra scanned the area, ensuring no immediate threats. The ship's control panels glowed softly, waiting for someone to activate them. Lyra's fingers moved over the interface with ease, recalling the sequences she had memorized from her observations. The engines hummed to life, and the ship shuddered as it prepared for takeoff. As the vessel lifted off, Lyra looked out at the colony shrinking beneath them. The Vorin had always believed humans weak and incapable of defiance. They had been wrong. She felt a surge of pride, not arrogance, but recognition of the strength humans carried within them. Intelligence, patience, resilience, these were the tools that had brought them here. Ren looked at her, eyes wide with awe. "We did it," he whispered. Lyra nodded, but her mind was already on the next challenge. Freedom was not just the absence of captivity, it was the beginning of reclaiming what had been lost. They were free, but the galaxy was vast, and danger was never far. As the ship moved further from the colony, Lyra reflected on the journey. Years of observation, patience, and cleverness had made this possible. She had learned to use the Vorin's own assumptions against them, to exploit patterns and weaknesses, and to rely on the human spirit's innate resilience. Every human story she had heard, every tale of survival against impossible odds, had prepared her for this moment. But Lyra also knew that this was only the beginning. The Vorin would not forget, and the galaxy was filled with challenges far greater than a single colony. Yet she felt a confidence that had been absent for years. Humans were underestimated too often, but that underestimation was their greatest weapon. They adapted, they endured, and when necessary, they struck with precision and intelligence. As the stars streaked past the ship's windows, Lyra allowed herself a moment of reflection. She thought of the other captives left behind, the lives that had been bound by fear and cold. She vowed that someday, somehow, she would return to help them. The spark of human ingenuity and courage could not be contained forever. Ren, sitting quietly beside her, broke the silence. "Where do we go now?" Lyra looked at him, a small smile forming on her lips. "We find others like us, we make sure humanity is never underestimated again, and we survive." She was human, and that meant she was capable of extraordinary things. Years of suffering, cold, and fear had honed her mind, sharpened her instincts, and strengthened her resolve. The Vorin had thought they could break her, use her, and discard her. They had underestimated the one thing they could never control, the human spirit. As the ship drifted further into the stars, Lyra felt a profound sense of purpose. The galaxy was full of unknowns, but humans had a way of turning adversity into opportunity. Every challenge, every obstacle was a chance to prove that humanity's ingenuity and resilience were unmatched. The cold, the fear, the years of being used as a tool, they were all behind her now. Ahead lay possibility, hope, and the endless potential of a human determined to reclaim freedom, not just for herself, but for every human who had been underestimated. And Lyra knew, with absolute certainty, that she was ready for whatever came next. The stars stretched endlessly beyond the ship's windows, cold and beautiful, a universe full of possibilities and dangers alike. Lyra stood at the control panel, hands resting lightly on the interface as she surveyed the small group of humans gathered in the cabin. Ren sat nearby, exhausted but alert, while a few other captives they had rescued from the colony were huddled together, watching the strange technology around them with wide eyes. For the first time in years, Lyra felt a sense of agency. The Vorin could no longer dictate her life, and for the first time she could act on her own terms. Yet the shadow of the colony remained in her mind. Many humans were still trapped there, still subjected to the cruel routines of the aliens. Lyra had tasted freedom, but she could not forget those left behind. Captain Joran, a human explorer who had been monitoring the Vorin colony for months, entered the cabin. His presence was calm but commanding, and he brought a sense of relief to the captives. He had been the one who discovered Lyra's coded signals and had coordinated the initial extraction plan. Now, he had a plan to liberate the remaining humans and weaken the Vorin hold on the colony. "You've done well," Joran said quietly, nodding to Lyra. "But this is only the beginning. The Vorin won't take this lightly. They'll send patrols, reinforcements, perhaps even attack ships. We have to move carefully. With your help, we can free everyone and escape before they even realize what's happening." Every route was calculated, every angle considered. The goal was simple but dangerous. Enter the colony undetected, disable the security systems, and extract the remaining captives. As they approached the outer rim of the colony, Lyra's nerves sharpened. The Vorin had already begun to notice disruptions in their systems, likely caused by the initial extraction of Lyra and Ren. Patrols had increased, and sensors were more sensitive. Any mistake could result in immediate detection. The ship descended cautiously, landing near a maintenance bay Lyra had identified as vulnerable. Using the cover of darkness, they deployed a small extraction team, moving quietly through the shadows toward the interior of the colony. Lyra led the way, her intimate knowledge of the layout proving invaluable. She guided the team past locked doors, sensor grids, and patrolling guards, each step precise and calculated. Inside the colony, Lyra's mind raced. Every corridor held danger, every corner a potential trap. She relied on her observation skills, honed over years of captivity, to anticipate movements and avoid detection. The humans moved as one, silent and focused, following her lead. They reached the first holding area, a chamber where a dozen humans were confined. Lyra quickly assessed the security measures, a combination of biometric locks, alien sensors, and Vorin patrols. She manipulated the systems she had studied, carefully bypassing the locks without triggering alarms. One by one, the humans stepped free, their expressions a mixture of fear and hope. "This way," Lyra whispered, leading them toward the exit. The group moved with quiet urgency, guided by her knowledge and precision. They passed corridors where Vorin guards were stationed, and each encounter was a test of nerves and skill. Lyra remained calm, her mind focused on the objective, freedom. As they navigated deeper into the colony, a patrol approached unexpectedly. Lyra froze, calculating the timing and angles. With careful gestures, she guided the humans to hidden alcoves, ensuring they remained unseen. The guards passed, unaware of the humans moving inches away. Lyra exhaled quietly, the tension of the moment a reminder of how close danger always was. They reached a central control hub, the heart of the colony's security network. Lyra quickly analyzed the systems, identifying the critical nodes that controlled the surveillance grids and patrol routes. Using her knowledge and the technical skills of the extraction team, she began to disable the security measures. Lights flickered, sensors hummed, and slowly the network's control slipped from the Vorin's hands. The Vorin were not unaware of the intrusion. Alarms began to sound in distant sections, and guards mobilized in response. Lyra's plan required speed and precision. She guided the humans through alternate routes, avoiding the main corridors now swarming with Vorin forces. Every step was a balance of risk and necessity, and Lyra's mind remained sharp, calculating the safest path forward. They reached the outer perimeter where escape shuttles were waiting. The Vorin had begun to respond aggressively, but Lyra had anticipated this. Using environmental controls, she created diversions, overheating a generator here, causing a small explosion there, drawing Vorin forces away from the escape points. The humans moved swiftly, boarding the shuttles with Lyra leading the way. As the shuttles lifted off, the Vorin attempted to intercept. Patrol ships accelerated toward them, weapons charging. Lyra, at the controls of the lead shuttle, maneuvered with precision. The humans had no experience in combat, but Lyra's quick thinking and strategic planning allowed them to evade the attacks. She relied on speed, misdirection, and the element of surprise, proving once again that human ingenuity could outmatch brute force. The shuttles reached orbit, regrouping with Joran's ship. Lyra guided them inside, ensuring everyone was safe. The humans, once prisoners, now looked around with wonder and relief. They had escaped the cold, oppressive hands of the Vorin, and for the first time their futures were their own. Yet the mission was not complete. The Vorin colony still posed a threat, and Lyra knew that leaving it operational would endanger other humans in the galaxy. They had to ensure the Vorin could not continue their cruel practices unchecked. Lyra proposed a calculated strike, disable key systems, sow confusion, and leave the colony incapable of harming more humans. Joran agreed, and together they executed the plan. Using the knowledge Lyra had gained over years, they infiltrated the colony one last time. They sabotaged critical systems, rerouted power to create internal chaos, and disrupted communications. The Vorin, faced with sudden failures and unpredictability, were thrown into disarray. Lyra's careful planning ensured that the humans could complete their mission without unnecessary violence, relying instead on strategy and intelligence. As the final systems failed, Lyra confronted the Vorin leadership. The main control chamber was guarded, but Lyra's presence and knowledge allowed her to navigate the room without confrontation. She spoke, her voice calm but firm, to the alien leader. She demonstrated the weaknesses in their assumptions, the flaws in their reliance on control, and the resilience of the humans they had underestimated. The Vorin were forced to acknowledge what they had failed to see for years. Humans were not weak, fragile, or easily broken. Intelligence, adaptability, and courage were qualities that could not be suppressed, and Lyra's actions were living proof. The confrontation was not violent, but it carried the weight of truth, shaking the confidence of the Vorin in their own superiority. With the colony's systems disabled and the remaining humans safe, Lyra and Joran regrouped with the freed captives. Relief and gratitude filled the air, but Lyra knew the galaxy remained vast and dangerous. Humans were free for now, but the universe was unpredictable. Yet she also knew that as long as humans retained their ingenuity, courage, and determination, no challenge could truly overwhelm them. The group returned to the ship, leaving the Vorin colony behind. Lyra took a moment to look back, feeling a mixture of triumph and resolve. The colony had been a place of fear, cold, and oppression, but it had also been the crucible in which her skills, patience, and intelligence had been honed. The Vorin had underestimated her, as they had underestimated all humans, and that underestimation had become their undoing. As the stars stretched out before them, Lyra reflected on the journey. Years of suffering and captivity had tested every aspect of her being, yet she had emerged not broken but stronger. The human spirit, she realized, was unyielding. Even in the harshest conditions, it could adapt, survive, and triumph. Intelligence, courage, and perseverance were weapons no one could take away. Ren approached her, his face filled with awe and hope. "We're free," he said softly. Lyra smiled, a genuine expression of relief and determination. "Yes," she replied, "and we will make sure humans are never underestimated again. This is only the beginning." They had faced oppression, cruelty, and unimaginable challenges, yet they had prevailed. Humanity's resilience and ingenuity had shone brighter than any cold, calculated control the Vorin could impose. In the quiet moments, Lyra thought of the other humans scattered across the galaxy, those who might still be in danger or captivity. She vowed that their freedom would not be forgotten. Humans were underestimated too often, but that underestimation would be their greatest strength. Adaptability, intelligence, and courage were qualities that no alien could fully comprehend, and Lyra intended to use them to protect her species. The stars beyond the ship's windows seemed to reflect her determination. The universe was vast, filled with unknown dangers and challenges, but it was also filled with opportunities. Humanity's potential was limitless, and Lyra was living proof. She had turned oppression into strategy, captivity into experience, and fear into action. As the ship glided silently through space, Lyra allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. She thought of her childhood home, of the life she had lost, and of the freedom she now possessed. Every hardship, every moment of suffering had led her to this point. She was human, and that meant she was capable of extraordinary things. Captain Joran approached, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You've done more than anyone could have imagined," he said. Lyra nodded, her mind already planning the next steps, the next missions, the next opportunities to ensure that humans would never again be seen as weak. The freed captives, inspired by her courage and leadership, began to prepare for the journey ahead. They were humans, resilient and determined, ready to face whatever the galaxy might throw at them. Lyra felt a deep sense of pride and responsibility. She had not only survived, but had guided others to freedom. That was the essence of humanity, strength not measured in physical power alone, but in intelligence, courage, and unyielding determination. As the ship continued its journey, Lyra knew the story was far from over. The universe was vast, and there would be new challenges, new threats, and new opportunities. But she also knew that as long as humans remained true to their ingenuity, resourcefulness, and courage, they would endure. They would thrive. They would prevail. And Lyra, having endured years of cold, fear, and captivity, would lead them. The stars stretched endlessly before them, a canvas of infinite possibility. Humanity, underestimated for too long, had shown what it was truly capable of. Lyra felt the warmth of hope, courage, and determination in her chest, the real heat of life that no Vorin could ever take. And for the first time in years, she knew that she and all humans were unstoppable.